Once there was a king's daughter who went out into the forest and sat down beside a cool well. She had a golden ball, her dearest plaything, and she would throw it up into the air and catch it again, and took great pleasure in this. Once the ball flew very high. She had already stretched out her hand, her fingers curled to catch it, when it struck the ground beside her instead, rolled and went straight into the water. The king's daughter watched it go, horrified. The well was so deep that no bottom could be seen. She began to weep pitifully and cried out, "Oh, if only I had my ball again! I would give anything for it. My clothes, my jewels, my pearls, anything in the world." While she was lamenting like this, a frog stuck its head out of the water and said, "King's daughter, why do you weep so bitterly?" "Oh," she said, "you nasty frog, what help could you be to me? My golden ball has fallen into the well." The frog said, "Your pearls, your jewels, your clothes, I want none of that. But if you will take me as your companion, let me sit beside you and eat from your golden little plate and sleep in your little bed and hold me dear, then I will bring your ball back to you." The king's daughter thought, "What nonsense the simple frog is talking. He must stay in his water, surely. But perhaps he really can fetch my ball." So she would only say yes. And she said, "Yes, yes, whatever you like. Only bring me back my golden ball, and I will promise you anything." The frog put his head under the water and dove down, and it was not long before he rose again, the ball held in his mouth, and threw it onto the bank. When the king's daughter saw her ball again, she ran to it at once, snatched it up, and was so glad to hold it in her hand again that she thought of nothing else. She ran straight home with it. The frog called after her, "Wait, king's daughter, and take me with you as you promised." But she did not listen. The next day, the king's daughter sat at the table, and she heard something coming up the marble stair. Plitch, platch, plitch, platch. Soon after, there came a knock at the door, and a voice called out, "King's daughter, youngest one, open the door for me." She ran and opened the door, and there was the frog, whom she had already forgotten. Badly frightened, she slammed the door shut and hurried back to her seat. The king saw how her heart was pounding and said, "Why are you afraid?" "Out there," she said, "is a nasty frog. He fetched my golden ball out of the water, and I promised him he could be my companion. But I never believed he could leave his water. Now he is out there at the door, and he wants to come in." Then came the knock a second time, and the voice called, "King's daughter, youngest one, open the door for me. Have you forgotten what you said to me only yesterday, beside the cool well water? King's daughter, youngest one, open the door for me." The king said, "What you have promised, you must keep. Go and open the door for the frog." She obeyed, and the frog hopped in and followed close at her heels all the way to her chair. And when she had sat down again, he called out, "Lift me up beside you, onto the chair." The king's daughter did not want to, but the king commanded it. Once the frog was up, he said, "Now, push your little golden plate nearer, so I may eat with you." This too she had to do. When he had eaten his fill, he said, "Now I am tired, and I wish to sleep. Carry me up to your little room, make your little bed ready, and we will lie down together in it." The king's daughter was horrified to hear this. She was afraid of the cold, damp frog. She could not bear even to touch him, and now he was to lie beside her in her own bed? She began to cry and would not do it at all. But the king grew angry and commanded her, on pain of his displeasure, to do as she had promised. It was no use. She had to do as her father wished, though her heart was bitter within her. She picked the frog up with 2 fingers, carried him up to her chamber, and got into bed. And instead of laying him beside her, she flung him, smack, against the wall. "Now you will leave me in peace, you nasty frog." But the frog did not fall down dead. Instead, as he dropped onto the bed, he was a handsome young prince. He was now her dear companion, and she held him precious, just as she had promised, and they fell asleep together, well content. In the morning, a splendid carriage came, drawn by 8 horses, trimmed with feathers and gleaming with gold. Behind it stood faithful Henry, the prince's own servant. Faithful Henry had grieved so bitterly over his master's transformation that he had been forced to bind 3 iron bands around his own heart so that it would not burst from sorrow. The prince took his seat in the carriage beside the king's daughter, and the faithful servant stood up behind, and so they set off to travel to the prince's kingdom. And when they had gone some distance, the prince heard a loud crack behind him. He turned and called out, "Henry, the carriage is breaking." "No, my lord, it is not the carriage. It is a band from around my heart, which lay there in such great pain when you sat there by the well, when you were a frog." Once more, and then once more, the prince heard the cracking sound, and each time he thought the carriage must be breaking. But it was only the bands springing free from faithful Henry's heart, because his master was set free and was happy at last.